Are we live already?
Yes.
Nice.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another online session. I'm excited to welcome Maria from Ukraine, and we'll talk about an extremely important topic. You know that schools and institutions are now moving to the online instruction. And we need sessions like this. We need people and educators from all over the world to share their experiences with us. Because if we don't do that, we're not going to learn. We face so many challenges. Hi, Maria. Welcome to Everyone Academy.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, hello. From Ukraine.
Yes, so Ukraine and from Ukraine right to Morocco. Okay, so I know that Maria is a very active teacher. She loves what she's doing. She's passionate about writing and other things, other activities she will talk later about. I will let her do the introduction. She can introduce herself, her background. And also, she can talk a little bit about her book. And I will ask her more questions about her book at the end of the session. So the floor is yours, Maria. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So I'm from Ukraine. Yeah, I am a Cambridge certified ESL teacher and author. This is my very first book that I have written during this lockdown. It's about how to reduce your time, as the name of the session today, right? Preparing for online classes and prevent emotional burnout, because it's actually part of my story and I will talk more about it today. Actually, it led me to radical changes in my approaches. I have been teaching for about 12 years, right? But then this emotional burnout happened, and yeah, I changed a lot. I would say my approach is thanks to Scott Thornbury, to Teaching Unplugged, '𝐫𝐞𝐿, that's the other name. And yeah, it basically changed my life, I would say.
Right. I saw a lovely circle around your book. I know it's done for a purpose. It's water, right?
It is water, and it's also like a Zen sign, you know, because I practice Zen. And Zen, it means, you know, some minimalism, right? And basically 𝐫𝐞, it's about like Zen methodology, as for me. Like it's really about some essential stuff, you know, and about minimalism. And I will also actually address it today with great pleasure.
That's great. The cover is great. Okay, so I will let Maria share her presentation. But before we do that, I would like the audience to write in the comment section where you're from and what you do in online teaching, what you do with your students, what kind of platforms you use. Just a quick note. So tell us where you're from, and I will start. I know we have teachers from Tunisia, yes, and also from Morocco and from different Arab countries.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
You know, I couldn't have dreamt about such a moment in my life that I would be able, you know, to communicate with people all over the world. And right now it became so possible. Maybe we sometimes take it for granted already, but it is amazing, really. And, you know, during this past year, I would say I was so blessed to communicate with really, really wide variety of amazing professionals. And I think it enriches us a lot when we collaborate, when we talk, when we explore.
Yes, online communication is really awesome. You feel closer to people and you can talk to them. Thanks to to Zoom and thanks to so many learning management systems.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Maria, so you can start your presentation and then we can move to discussion later.
Sure. Alrighty. Can you see it?
Yes. Great.
Oh, I love your logo. Sky is the limit. Isn't it amazing? And I decided to add a little bit of water.
it's limitless.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is actually Kyiv, where I live. This is like a picture from near my neighborhood.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I live awesome. Near the river. Yeah, I love it, really. I love to live near water. It gives me some, I don't know, fresh ideas, strength, and so on. Right. And also I chose it, I would say, on purpose, because I also wanted to share with you my favorite quote ever. Once I heard it, I fell totally in love. So if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Why I chose it? Because it wonderfully sums up what I'm trying to do in my style of teaching, I would say, how I deal with my students and so on. And right now, my focus has become actually to help teachers to prevent and reduce burnout. So basically, this sums up pretty well. But I can say that it hasn't been all the time like that. And about two and a half years before actually the pandemic, it was some crisis period, I would say, in my life when I was experiencing burnout, emotional burnout. And I can say that I even didn't realize it at that moment, and that's, I would say, the risk of that sometimes you don't really even understand what you're going through. And especially, when I remember thinking, well, I'm like strong, I'm young, I can handle everything, just give it to me, and so on. And I had a lot of moments, and over preparing, it was actually one of the moments that contributed to this burnout, drop by drop by drop by drop, until it just like exploded, I would say. And what else was really hard, right? Because there were a lot of materials. I had groups, I had individual students, a lot of materials, a lot of books, and I tried to personalize them to some extent, right? And also the pace was quite fast because, you have a topic, then the next lesson you repeat, you have another topic, and it's just like over and over again. And students, they couldn't also keep up maybe with that pace also. So of course I tried my best to make it as comfortable as possible. But anyway, I was feeling that something was off a lot. And also by that time I already had done CELTA. I tried to make my lessons with beautiful structure, with all the transitions. I mean, all this, like different parts, yes, that should be there with some lesson plans and so on. But I always felt that there was some distance between me and my students. And at some point, it's just started to grow. And, this kind of disconnection and I couldn't understand what was happening, why it was happening. And I was losing my patience and my passion for teaching, and just, it was like really, really hard. And so basically what I wanted to kind of lead to is that the risk of over-preparing is an emotional burnout, right? And I remember that when I realized that, when I actually came to the teaching room and there was this teacher sitting, with like hands over her head. And she was really frustrated. And then she just like looked at me and said, you know, Mary, I just feel like a machine. I prepare for my classes. I have these classes, and then I just go to sleep. Then I wake up, and this cycle just runs over and over. Plus, of course, some different tasks that I have to do, just like in life, right? Cooking or something like that. And there is no way out. And she was like, she just looked at me in such a hopeless way that I don't know, I felt so heartbroken at that moment. And, you know, I also felt that that's what I actually had been going through. And it, I would say, led me to make a decision that there is a way out, there should be, and something can be done, you know, not to get into such a situation. And that was, I think, the moment when I stopped treating emotional burnout as a part of the profession, because I used to. And when I right now talk to teachers, I also understand that they also consider at least in the back of their minds, that it's kind of normal, that it is like a part of our profession. And I don't know, it was like mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing for me that, well, it's not a part of profession, and it can be different. Also, I always started right now to talk about emotional burnout, right? And at other webinars, teachers were asking me, but why only emotional? Why don't you talk about mental or physical? Because of course there is this burnout in that direction too. But of course, definitely. But I just noticed that we talk too much maybe about only mental and physical, and not enough about emotional. But it is a huge part of our lives, right? And emotions, they are actually a form of information that we gotta try to learn to how to read. And it is important. Because, for example, just today I read one interesting post of my colleague, and she just wrote that there is such a formula. So there is a situation, and she even connected it to her classes, that so there was a situation there, her students didn't do their homework, right? And she thought about it, okay, they didn't do their homework, and because they don't care about English, they don't care about me, they don't respect or something, right? And it leads to emotion, right? That you feel some anger and some frustration, and then you have some reaction, right? So there is this, I would say, like a pattern, and reaction can be different, right? And it can be harmful for us and for other people, even subconsciously, without even realizing we can actually do that. So I would say that paying attention to emotions is extremely important. Because I've been to that moment when I didn't do that, and I got into kind of big trouble, and I had long time of recovery. And I know that it really should be, I would say, like a huge part, I would say, of our life that we also pay attention to. So what are the solutions of over-preparing? Because we kind of take today more of like some part, I would say, right, of burnout. So what are the solutions? Well, I would say that I don't have the instant ones because preventing burnout is a process, and it is about changing the mindset and our habits. And it really happens just like step by step. First of all, realizing what the reasons are, what our triggers are, and then step by step, just dealing with them, I would say, right, on a constant basis. So what we can start, for example, from, it's actually the benefits of not over preparing, kind of look from another side, right? that can be pretty inspiring. So if we don't over-preparing, we have more time for ourselves, our families and friends, quality rest, hobbies, books, traveling, reflection and analysis that enriches our work, hanging out with colleagues and sharing knowledge, creativity, artistic expression, quality education, and some other of your variants. Because, you know, what I noticed that I sometimes tend to put work at the first place for a number of reasons, I would say, and kind of be identified with work. And in that case, work can take like 24/7 time in our lives, right? Even including some weekends and so on. And this is not a good place to be, right? Because our life is not only about our work, right? It's just like a part of it, right? And we also have other areas of life that can, and all of them, they can enrich kind of each other, right? They influence each other. And it becomes more healthy when we start setting some boundaries, right? Which is sometimes so hard. I don't know, at least what I have experienced, because I'm also like a freelancer. I have been freelancing for 2 years already. And really, you can be your worst boss that give you some tasks, just a little bit more, and pushes and everything. But yeah, so I think this is a very good skill when you try to learn how to not to do that. Yeah, how to be a kind boss to yourself, right? With whom you actually want to work, right? And to set some boundaries and to understand, right? And kind of to look beyond this work situation, right? But to other areas of life. So when we know our benefits, our personal benefits, and I think maybe here it's really nice to just like sit down and write it down and think about what really matters to us in our lives, right? And it can inspire us to do something about it, right? If we have this over preparation problem, right? So how to stop over preparing? We kind of continuing this, exploring this topic. I love this quote by Scott Thornbury that like cooking, you start off following the cookbooks faithfully, right? And the same with for us, I think, as teachers, as we begin, right? We have some course book, right? And so on. And we just like learn our ABCs, have our plan B, which is always a good thing. Until you start acquiring some reliable cooking skills and intuitions, and you can start to improvise successfully, right? And what I noticed that with some experience, we still don't give ourselves that freedom to improvise successfully, and we still kind of limit ourselves to some extent. And I was wondering why that happens. And I think it has to do, and once again, when we're dealing with over-preparing, we need to look at different aspects, and with burnout also, yeah? So we gotta look into psychology and some teaching approaches and so on. So we kind of need a wider picture, right? So in this case, I think what is helpful is cultivate an attitude of being enough, right? The psychological aspect of our being. Easy to say, but not so easy to do, right? Yeah, because it's really, I don't know, what I observed in me, I would say, right? So I see that there are some ups and downs. And when I started, because I write about this in the book, but it's just like not a lot, I would say. I kind of pay attention to this. And then I started to explore more. And recently I've listened to Eckhart Tolle, and I remembered his quote. It just like synced in my mind that life is designed for things to go wrong. And it was so interesting because he said, you know, that why it happens that way, there is a reason for that, because it boosts evolution, right? It makes us evolve and develop and deepen and be more compassionate beings, right? And to explore ourselves, right? Without these things go wrong, I would say it might not be happening, right? And all the time in some area of our life, something goes wrong. I think that you all can agree with me. Well, this is true for me, for example. So I was like, I found it very relatable. So from one side, yeah, this thing that this is actually not a bad thing. It's like evolutionary thing, right? But from another side, we also have this perfectionism that can drive us to the point of, you know, obsession, that to, I don't know, that we become unstoppable. One more task, one more little task, and so on. And we just like don't know where to stop. And well, basically it leads to self-destruction. We start feeling some pain, maybe it's some emotional, maybe it's physical health is not becoming very good, and so on. So some problems start, I would say. So maybe this quote summed up for me some golden middle, that we are a masterpiece. It's by Sophia Bush. She's like hello from cinematography. She's actress, producer, and so on. So that you are a masterpiece and a work in progress simultaneously, right? So we, with all our weaknesses and strengths, right? And at the same time, so we are like masterpieces and really unique, right? And at the same time, we're always a work in progress, like really always. And it also resonated with me, right? Because we are always learning, and this is basically like a growth mindset. And it's beautiful, I think, right? And also what helps me a lot, and also as teachers, we work a lot with our attention, right? With attention, right? We are very attentive to students, how they are doing, what they're doing, maybe some also their emotional states, psychological states, right? And the thing is that I think it's time for us to turn that attention towards ourselves, right? And to look into how are we feeling in terms of our bodies. So have we eaten? I mean, something very simple, but still not always we do that, right? I don't know, have we slept enough, and so on. Then about emotions, how are we feeling? How about our breathing? Is it like agitated or is it calm? And also about our minds, where is our focus? What are we basically thinking about and telling to ourselves? Because the negative self-talk, it's can be pretty much destructive, right? So I would say it came down for me to self-awareness. So how to cultivate an attitude of being enough. It is about cultivating this self-awareness and really kind attitude toward ourselves, like starting to be our best friend, which is also not very easy thing to do, because we tend to criticize ourselves more and everything, right? But not helpful. Alrighty. So this is like one of the moments of mindset, right? And also another point of mindset that I want to talk today, it's about less is more. There are more moments that I would love to touch, but as for today, I would take just one more. So less is more. As teachers, well, I remember how I would bring 100,000 slides, games, and everything, and all these materials, and just like pour it students, and all the time I was in this search of something interesting, right, to entertain them basically, right? Yeah, which is not a good thing, I would say. And we sometimes think that the more the better, but it's not like that, because for us it's actually overwhelming, right? And it is also overwhelming for students, especially with our excessive information nowadays, right? We have so much information, so it can be really overwhelming. So this less is more approach, it is very much in tune with Teaching Unplugged, 𝐫𝐞𝐝 ELT by Scott Thornbury and Luke Maddings. They wrote a book about it. It is basically a methodology of minimalism, and I found a very nice quote about minimalism, that it's not about having less, really. It's about making room for more of what matters. So basically, when I was coming to students, right, I would bring with myself all this pile of materials, course books, everything, and I would give it to students. Well, once again, depending on the judgment, right? So what I think can be good for them right now. But about this less is more methodology, it's a little bit like all the way around. We are more concentrated on students. We are getting deeper into their interests. We are letting them be, you know, like partners, you know, so they can be in charge of their learning. They can choose, they can bring, they can be content generators. And I can say that I interviewed all my students, like literally everybody. And I have some students with whom I had lessons, for example, 5 years ago, and the same student came to me now. So I even have this kind of difference when I used to teach in another way and right now in this way. And they all tell that it has become much more effective for them. It has become also about them, because anyway, when we follow the course book, it is about somebody's life, about some Kate and Bob, and then we try somehow connect this information to their life and personalize. When in this case, we, from the start, we basically personalize everything, and all this English, it becomes about them, right? And it's becoming also easier for them to be users of English, not just learners for 25 years or more, but users of English right here, right now, and like step by step. Alrighty. And also, I have some acting background, and you know, it helps me right now a lot, because it also helps me to look at things from different angles. And I remember we were told, well, basically, if we want to act naturally and beautifully, wonderfully, we needed to step into that person's shoes who we want to play, for example, right? To understand the motives, the desires, what drives this person, right? So what are the fears and so on. And it became really relevant for me to step into my students' shoes, right? And this is what some pieces I would say that I found out from our conversations, that, well, they have tried to learn English on a number of occasions. I work with adults, and that's why it is the case for them. So can you imagine the person already comes to you and you are his or her 25th teacher after lots of failures, you know, of just like finally learn this language, right? So yeah, so usually I'm not the first. While learning also, this comes from neuroscience. I'm also very much interested in that, but I'm not going right now too deep into that, but just like some moment that while learning, we are transforming our brain and creating new neural connections, sort of like physiologically, right? And it triggers a wide variety of emotions, including memories of our previous traumatic experiences. I don't know, all my students, they come with some traumatic experience, maybe, especially from school, because our school system, I don't know, it's sometimes you just, I don't know, look at it, unbelievable. Although I was quite lucky to have really great teachers, but as I see, I was really lucky because people just come and they have this traumatic experience that also created this bigger barrier for them to speak, right? They don't want to talk about irrelevant topics, learn some random information they will never use. Yes, they want to understand how to apply this knowledge in their lives. This is for sure. They have been in a lot of shameful situations connected to English and failed a lot. And speaking English is the most vulnerable skill because basically it is about producing something, right? It's about like as if you were on some stage, invisible stage, yes? All the projectors, well, it feels like that, right? Are pointing at you, right? And you gotta say something, right? And so basically, that's what we are dealing with, a lot of frustration, a lot of insecurities. What helps in this case, of course, is understanding this situation. I don't know, I think we're all learners too, right? And we also get into these situations. We have been into these situations. We can relate to them for sure. We can be empathetic towards our students. And also what we can do, that we can start with getting to know our students' true motivation, needs, interest, and establish emotional connection. Because I believe that without emotional connection, no real learning is possible. It will be some, I don't know, not really deep, or I don't know. That's what I have noticed, right? So if I have this emotional connection that we are actually building, it's like building a relationship between me and the student, right? It's about communication. And also, once again, emotional connection, right? Why is it important? I decided to share with you today a wonderful quote from book Permission to Feel, the power of emotional intelligence to achieve well-being success by Mark Brackett. He's a director at Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, and he talks clearly a lot about emotions. And here's a wonderful quote: "The research is clear. Emotions determine whether academic content will be processed deeply and remembered. Linking emotion to learning ensures that students find classroom instructions relevant. It's what supports students in discovering their purpose and passion. It's what drives their persistence," right? And that's what we need in our classrooms, right? We need them to be purposeful, to understand where they're moving, right? It's really hard if we don't understand why you need English and where you're moving, right? What is your goal? It's hard to get there without passion, without feeling that enjoyment, right? Because it's a long road, right? And that's why they quit so quickly sometimes, because they want, maybe sometimes that's the case, everything right here, right now, right? They can't really find this enjoyment in the process, and they're already oriented. Okay, I want this result. I can't, this result of being a fluent English speaker or like become like a native. I don't know, what kind of purpose is this? I don't think this is ever possible, right? To become like What does it mean actually to be fluent, right? And or to speak perfect English. So we also talk about it with my students, though there is no such thing as a perfect English. Even language itself, it develops, it changes over some time, right? So there is no such a thing as perfect English. So what we first do with our students, of course, the very first lesson, I pay attention to motivation. I ask questions, follow-up questions, until we dig deeper and we understand true motivation. Because I don't know, in a lot of cases, people come to me and they say, okay, I want to speak fluent English, right? Or I want that perfect English, as I mentioned before. But that is so general, that doesn't evoke anything. It's not personal, it's too general, right? So clearly a person sometimes doesn't understand why really, or maybe because it is a trend, or maybe because everybody learns English, and well, it's just not, it's shameful not to learn English and not to know English, right? So it is also one of the motivations that people come to me. But is it really sparks your passion when you're learning English because it is shameful not to know it? Not really, I don't know. So we dig deeper, right? And here are the examples, what I asked. So what exactly do you need English for? Why is it important to you? So what is your goal? How can you tell if you have reached your goal? This question makes them really think for a longer period of time. What is your motivation on a scale of 1 to 10? What are you prepared to take responsibility for in the learning process? Because I want a partner in learning. I mean, I want that I take responsibility for delivering, not even delivering, but showing the road, sharing some tools, right? But I expect from the student to take the responsibility for the learning process, because sometimes they tend to try to give it to you, blame you for not having some results, but this is not really healthy. And this, by the way, about the motivation and so on, about the goal setting, I took it from the language coaching. So basically it already some elements of language coaching that I merged with teaching, unplugged style of teaching. So here is the example of my IT students from Business English, how I work with him. And also here is another example, I would say, of my client. She's a director of photography. That's her actually real picture. I don't know. I asked her already a million questions about, I mean, how does she cope with all this huge cameras, for example, right? That she needs, of course, to carry around and shoot some videos and so on. So it's not an easy job, even physically, I would say. So at first she came and she also had something like, I want some fluent English, right? We clarified the goal and motivation. And she said that she wanted to be able to work with British directors and shoot quality movies and videos. Perfect. So one of the tasks that I gave you, for example, right, to bring the video she shot, tell me how it was done, what problems arose, how she solved them, what's the story, and so on. And I also asked her to write about it, right? And from what she wrote, I understood also, okay, what grammar topics to take, right? So she can she can be able to talk about it in a more correct way, I would say, right? Then, of course, it was about some photos, podcasts. And what was interesting, for example, about the podcast, she chose some interesting director of photography she really likes. And we discussed the tips and interesting solutions they propose, these directors. And she actually used them in her work. So basically it was, and about English and about her professional development, right? All in English. So she became basically like a user of English. Of course, I could bring something also, some video, podcast or something, but she was really the main generator of this content because, and it was like 100% interesting for her. Songs, movies, of course, we did a lot of role play. She wrote some situations, possible questions that the director could ask, and I checked, we played if there were some problems with grammar. Usually it was about some tenses or building questions or something. So of course we discussed them. So, and I can say that it was pretty much effective, that she started to feel much more confident, and she already worked with some different directors also from different countries, and she even had an opportunity to she didn't work with some British director, but at least she had some Skype meeting, and she was so happy when she came and she said that, oh, I understood what he was actually talking about, and I didn't freak out because it was the case, it had been the case before. Right. So basically, the goals, we're like moving towards the goals, and I see how enjoyable it is for her, and the progress is really visible, I would say. So what is also one of the central parts of this style of teaching unplugged, is to be able to play with emergent, spontaneous language. Or what it means, because of course, as we speak, for example, I can just tell you an example that recently my lesson has started like this. So, hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going really well. Finally, we have moved to our own house and I'm so happy. My congratulations. Can you show me around? Of course, I was interested. She said, sure. And she just started to show me around. Although my plan of the lesson was quite different, I would say, but she showed me around different rooms, some kitchen, some cute kitchen decor and everything. And we really discussed a lot. And what I noticed, of course, we put all this emergent and spontaneous language into Google Docs. So of course, we always note everything down. And then she, as a homework, she put all these phrases or some different words. Usually we try to, of course, more phrases. She put in Quizlet, then created some stories, once again wrote everything, right, about this excursion, I would say, around the house. And I saw that when she came at the next lesson, she could remember really a lot. And I saw that it was quite effective. And also after some time, we repeated, and I saw that really it was effective. And she also said the same thing. And it's interesting because it made me think, just a moment, I want to, oh, okay. Recently, I have been to a very interesting webinar by Penny Ur. I hope I pronounced correctly. And it is about teaching vocabulary, some insights from the research. And it just like connected the dots in my mind, because she said that teach words that would naturally co-occur in the context. For example, if you have a unit on family, it's better not just give our students words from the same group, you know, just like mother, father, son, daughter, sister, brother. That's how it is done in course books, but it is not that effective for our remembering. They probably do it because, well, of course, it is more comfortable to do it in that way, of course. But it is always better to learn these words in such a way. For example, family, at home, mother, father, love, look after, clean, kitchen. I don't know, for me, for example, it is much easier to learn this words rather than just mother, father, or something, right? Because in my mind, it creates some sequence, some story, some context. And that's basically what, and also, as you can see, it's about nouns, verbs, different phrases. So it's a combination of different things. And we really can remember it better. At least this is an insight from the research. And these were from our set of emergent items. I remember it was, well, one of them, right? So kitchen, Scandinavian style, tiles, sorting, terrace, celebration, heavy rain, fascinating, and etc. So yeah, for her it was so easy because she immediately connected all of them, right? Especially because she had the context, and it was really easy for her to remember these things. And of course, we also discussed different ways of describing things and everything. So yeah, that was pretty fascinating. We can also use some conversation starters, some for like to start the lesson, for example, right? To ask students to show and talk about some meaningful items or useless things that they want to get rid of, but still hold on to. This is one of the interesting moments. Then some views from the windows, pets, paintings on the wall. So it makes it very, very personal and about them. And they are so much more interested, right, to talk about this, right, to open up, to trust us, to share the story. Sometimes I can, as a teacher, share something, right, because once again, I think it's important to connect to our students as human beings. So me, not as a teacher and a student, you know, some roles, right, but also as a human being, and also share even some moments when, I don't know, I made some mistake or something like that. So kind of show some kind of vulnerability so they can see, oh, she's just like me, you know, so they can relate to us also in that way. Well, at least it works for me with my students. And of course, one of the moments, how we can talk about interests, right? Well, already, of course, during our lessons, we already get to know the interest, right? But this can be in the start, right? I took this from the book, Teaching Unplugged, that's about interests, right? That students like, don't mind. I usually add some phrases that I adore, I can stand, and so on. And we can also ask some follow-up questions, right? To have some, even a conversation. If it is a group, we can, in the beginning, we can send some Google form, for example, with this, and also take it into account for our next lessons. So just as a variant. But once again, interests, their needs, their motivations, they're really important. And of course, to establish this emotional connection between us. Right, and basically a lot of moments that I was talking today about, I took from the book that I wrote, right, for teachers. You can find it on Amazon or Gumroad, whatever is more comfortable for you. Yeah, because I just wanted to share, you know, some resources, some strategies that helped me to move away from this over-preparing, from these devastating feelings, you know, devastating place of my life into a more enjoyable one, feeling this connection with students, seeing their bright eyes because they can see their results and can be really inspired. So thank you very much for your attention.
That's great. Really, I enjoyed listening to your presentation. Really.
Thank you so much.
So before we I will give some time for the audience to ask some questions, like 2 minutes. And before I do that, I want to welcome Nuha from Egypt. Hi, Nuha.
Hello, Aziz. How are you?
Great. Okay, so
Hi, Mariam.
so I will let the audience prepare the questions. So okay, so you mentioned so many ideas in your talk, in your presentation, and they are really interesting. And I know that those ideas that you talked about come from your experience. And also the book that you wrote also is the fruit of your experiences. And it's good to write about something that you are passionate about. It makes you good. It's like, you know, that writing is therapeutic and you enjoy doing it.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
the idea of less is more. And when we teach less, students learn more. Some people say that this approach cannot be fostered in a model of marketization. You know, in a market model, there are always winners and losers. There are good and bad students. What do you think about this?
Interesting. Because I felt actually vice versa, because I had an opportunity to try this in a group, you know, when I had another approach, let's say, right? And also this less is more approach. And in groups, I had this experience, and of course, obviously individually, because right now, mostly I have individual clients, right? Yes, and I really, I think it really depends on a teacher, also how you organize this. I would say, how do you scaffold this? How much space you would give to students? And if you are able to to catch this interest, right? To understand like what is the really interesting for your students, right? And if you are able, you know, like to find this, you know, what kind of drives them, right? And of course, like, once again, you can do it just like by simply asking, right? And just like observing, asking, and so on. You shouldn't even come up with something like special, right? And give them the floor, right, to express this themselves. And actually it fosters another kind of not good, bad losers, or I don't know. So they actually, what I've seen, they start helping each other. They forget about like maybe, okay, they make mistakes or something, but they are so driven. They are interested in the content, right? And they are, you know, like producing some interesting ideas, sharing the stories. And yeah, they just forget about this, you know, differences.
Yes, you are right. This is really a great approach. Because when we bombard students with so much input, they get lost, they get confused. But when we give them like small chunks, we allow time for them to absorb the information, to process it, and even to control the pace of learning. I mentioned this because there are some people who said that you know, this approach of marketization, this professionalism, is actually an approach by someone called Fassi. And there is a lot of discussion about it. So you also mentioned setting some boundaries as a way to prevent burnout. I think it's a little bit difficult to separate your professional and your personal life, especially if you are a teacher. And you teach like some teachers teach like 20 or 25 hours per week. So it's really difficult.
I know. I would say this was one of the one of the reasons, not all, why I became a freelancer, because I started to, you know, like play with the workload, right, that I have, right, to raise the prices, to raise my expertise, and to have less students, to open up my space, actually of life, right, to experiment with different formats, synchronous format, asynchronous format, and so on. And it allowed me all these experiments, I would say, and seeing what is effective, what is not effective, right? And learning, constantly learning. I think this is like, for sure, one thing that we teachers, we will be doing till the rest of our lives, which is, I think, beautiful, to stay forever young. Who doesn't want, right? Because learning and all this, you know, it makes us really to stay young, you know, like to like flexible and, you know, right. And this kind of becoming the freelancer, it helped me a lot, I would say, and not to deal about this, what you said before, right, about this marketing thing and I don't know, demand, not a demand, I mean, all these different moments, I would say. So, and once again, yeah, but when you're a freelancer, there are different other, not maybe disadvantages, but risks, right? That it would just like kind of fill all your time, right? You just like work, you just open your eyes and you already work, right? And yeah, I think this should be carefully treated by us, right? We gotta make some decisions, we gotta set some boundaries, right? And separate it to some extent. Of course, I don't think that it's possible kind of to do it so vividly, right? But to some extent we can do it, for example, to have our weekends, right? To have some, I don't know, meetings with our friends and so on. But I think it comes down also to our choices, our personal choices, what we want, what is at the first place of our lives. So some priorities, right? So, and we can manage that. Yeah, we can do that.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Yes. Okay. So when you are not physically like in front of your students, and I'm talking about online learning, you know that you are not physically in front of your students. So I'm talking about virtual students. You know, virtual students are different from students in the classroom. So
True.
I want to talk about planning. Is there a difference between like planning for online courses versus planning for physical classrooms? Taking into account this approach of less is more. Do you think less is more also applies for both cases, online and physical classes?
Yeah, I've tried both, but once again, with all this pandemic, yes, it became just like online, right now. So obviously I'm dealing with only online at the moment. And I can say, yes, it applies to both wonderfully. And last year, actually, I had like the whole course with Scott Thornbury on this Talk Me LT and Teaching Unplugged, where for the whole month we had this amazing opportunity to dive into this world and how we can actually apply all of that, all of these things, right, into our virtual world, right? Once again, I have more experience also with individual students, right? And not a lot, right, with groups, but once again, that was my choice. So
what platform do you use? What platform do you use?
Zoom.
Zoom, yes.
Yeah, sure, Zoom, yeah. Sometimes Google Meets, right? Google Meets, I think this is like, also for actually both of my students, I have like 2 students, so like mini group, right? And with individual students, it is Zoom. And it works wonderfully well. Once again, it's not so much about pre-planning a lot. It is maybe more about post-planning, because some things emerges during, for example, like we start our lesson, right? Especially like in the beginning, right? I already hear what are the problematic zones in their English, right? It's not something like, okay, come, and then like, let's talk about present perfect today. Well, of course, I understand that teachers don't do that very often, but just like very, very rude example, let's say, right? But I rather come, I hear what is missing right here, right now in their language, right? I take notes and we kind of go into those directions, right? Once again, not all at once, right? But once again, less is more with some, you know, like digestible portions. As homework, of course, I give them to train this. It can be grammar, it can be some, I don't know, some vocabulary. Usually it's both, actually. Right. And then the next time, of course, we work a lot on repeating all this, right? And using actually in this practicing, right? And then taking next steps, right? So basically when we stop the lesson, I already can see what is the road and what we are going to do at the next lesson, right? So, so it's more like post-planning backwards.
Yes, that's a really interesting idea, post-planning. So you spot the challenges, the problems, and then you develop a way to deal with them.
Because, you know, what we are dealing with, that's exactly what they really need right here, right now, and in order to express their ideas, right? And then we can, so they tell the story, we see some problematic areas, we clarify them, and I don't know, some maybe I can feed in maybe some interesting phrases, yeah, how we can make it more beautiful and so on. And then we come back to the same story and they are able to produce the same story, right? But already with everything that we have discussed, and they're like, whoa. And it already gives, you know, a sense of achievement. It already gives them understanding, because we are doing this in their context and it's very understandable, it's very practical. Okay, so that's why. So, right, so there is no disconnection between a course book and then their life, right? And somehow they try to understand how to use it actually, like in real life. And here you are, here we are practicing. And of course, we always keep in mind their goals. So it's not just some blah, blah, blah chatting or something, right? During the lesson, we keep the goal and we check if we are moving toward the goal, if everything of this actually moves us closer to that goal, right? And then I also encourage them to use language outside the classroom, right? So they usually need it for work, for example, right? Like the girl that I told about, she's actually, right, so she's actually using English every day, talking to some directors, producers, and so on. And then she comes at the lesson and she said, oh, you know, first of all, like I was able to do this, I was able to do that. And, you know, it's already, here you are, here are the results.
Yes, that's interesting what they said. So Fatin from Tunisia has a question for you. She said that teachers and students are not familiar with online teaching in Tunisia. Can you share some quick tips with those people who are not, students who are not familiar with online teaching, and maybe they face like internet connectivity problems?
But she means more like some technical things, or she means more teaching aspect?
Yeah, she's talking about teaching. I just mentioned some challenges.
I see. Right, about teaching. So you can start, I was showing the slide about conversation starter, right? So she can just ask the student, you know, okay, just tell me about some, well, this can be like the very first lesson about some, I don't know, meaningful thing around, right? Or some like view. Can you show your pets? Can you show the view from the window? And once again, I always talk to them, forget about like making mistakes. You gotta make mistakes. So just like forget about, so I kind of try always to make them comfortable so they don't really think too much about that, right? But kind of make them talk, right? Even like, and then you can, for example, as you're listening, right, you can like write down some notes, for example, right? And then you can go from there. Oh, you know, you have just said, for example, I don't know, some maybe past simple problem, right? And then you can, once again, you can use the course book. Why not? Because once again, teaching unplugged, it beautifully goes with the course book, right? You can use it to different extent, right? You can start, for example, with something like this, more like a freer practice, right? With some conversation, and then you can go actually into some tasks from the course books and so on, and just like continue with that. So it's very, very flexible. Yeah, I think it should be whole another webinar, I think, on that.
Yes, yes, we would love to have you one more time.
No, I mean,
we can listen to you all day. That's a great talk.
No, I meant, thank you so much, but I mean that this is a very, I think, important topic that she mentioned, right? That how to teach, for example, online, right? And maybe so there are a lot of tips, right, that can be proposed, right, that can, so yeah, it should be maybe somebody else, right, will be talking about it, because yeah, it's an important
you know something really interesting, when we view teachers as resources, really great things happen in the world, because you are now teaching in your country and we have a different teacher teaching in another country, but when we meet, we exchange experiences, we learn, and we learn, sometimes we learn from talks like this, more than we learn from books.
True.
Because discussions and conversations are really matter a lot.
Some time ago, I think it was Matthew Noble who's I attended his talk, very interesting talk, and he was talking about reflection for teachers, because we can do it in a different way. We can, I don't know, I usually just go by the river, I kind of, some ideas come to me and I write it down, right? Or we can just like, we have some, I don't know, kind of structured reflection, right? But I remember that he was mentioning that dialogic reflection, what it means that there is some teacher, here is me, some ideas, right? And we are exchanging this. And I don't know, for me, this has been the most useful. I completely agree with you.
Great. So Alina, Nuha, do you have any quick comments or questions?
Hello. Yeah, it was great. I really just like to thank you. That's for it. But I don't have any questions. I'm more, I like to practice first and some kind of digest what I have heard, and the question starts to come up.
Yeah. I sometimes have absolutely the same situation. Yeah.
Okay, Maria, before we close the session, I know that writing is good, but at the same time is a little bit painful, right?
Sure.
What are can you quickly summarize some of the challenges you faced when you start writing your book? What are the challenges you faced?
Yes. I have been doing this for 7 months. It took me about like 7 months. Challenges about writing the book, there were a lot. I think the biggest challenge is the mindset that what we say to ourselves, what we are capable or incapable of, or some doubts or insecurities, some restrictions that we place on ourselves. And this is the hardest for me to deal with. And that's why I was working with a coach, and she was helping me to kind of to go through asking questions, because the writing itself, I mean, I think we all can do that, definitely, right? We can do anything, basically.
Yes.
We really do. But sometimes, I don't know, I remember some funny ideas started to come up. You know, you write a book when you were like you were like pensioner, some old lady, you have time, and then you write a book, you know, or something. I had a lot of stereotypes in my mind that I mean, who am I to write a book? Or I mean, a lot of things, you know, a lot of restrictions that we place.
Yes, because I asked you because when the is this your, I know this is your first book, right?
Yep.
So when we write our first book, we definitely meet so many challenges.
Oh, of course. Who is gonna read it?
Yes, we without ourselves, first of all, because sometimes without ourselves, but we learn from these challenges, I think.
A lot.
Yes. So thank you so much for this really great session. Before we end the session, do you have any final comments for the Everyone Academy audience?
Of course. Well, I really want to thank you for this opportunity, for once again teachers to meet, and I felt, I don't know, so comfortable sharing with you all my ideas. You're an amazing host, to be honest. You know, and yeah, and I think we definitely, well, sharing is caring, yes, and we can definitely do anything that we come up with, any ideas. They are not, sky is the limit. I mean, this sums up it's pretty well, I think. Sky is the limit. And maybe the very, very last, once again, if we...
My head is high in the sky.
It's okay. You're just like the limit. The sky is the limit. It's all right.
Yes.
Right. So, and also talking about burnout, that be attentive to ourselves, right? And be really careful and kind, and treat ourselves, you know, like in such a way that this burnout becomes not a normality, you know, but rather something that we can deal with, right? So it is not a part of our profession.
Yes, thank you so much, Maria. And we are waiting for a second edition or maybe a second book.
Thank you so much.
I saw where you live, so you have a lot of inspiration.
Yeah, yes.
You just need ideas.
Sure.
So thank you, Maria. Thank you, Nuha. Thank you, everyone. So we will wait for you in the October webinar. So bye-bye, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.